to Costly Conversations. I'm super excited because we have the Antonia Oakafor with us today. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you. And just a quick order of business, I did want to remind you guys, jump over to the Patreon, join us there, join the Costly community, and come on and have awesome community with us and private conversations with people like Antonia, who has graciously agreed to come on and have a nice, intimate conversation with those of us who are in the community. Well, thank you very much for that. And now, on to the show. I do need to let you guys know, I'm a little sick, not gonna lie. So if I get excited, it's gonna sound crazy. So I'm gonna try to be mellow. Antonia, what is going on? I'm so glad to have you on.
Yeah, it's so good to finally be on. I'm sorry, back-to-back pregnancies will do that to you. You're like, oh, you're just using an excuse, but
It's a good
no,
excuse.
it's good. It's a good excuse. So I'm glad things are starting to get back to normal. So it's good to finally come back on and talk to you and finally have this conversation. So
Yeah, well,
thanks for having me.
People are going to be like, what is she talking about? Why is she bringing that up? It's because we were going to try to do this a while back, and then things got a little crazy, and pregnancies and MIA and all that kind of stuff, which is important. I think it's important to take control of your life when you're bringing young life into the world. It's necessary. So much respect for that. Congratulations on your two beautiful children. You and your husband raising a wonderful family. We're happy to see it.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
to see
you.
it.
Thank you. Now let's get into it. People are probably like, if they don't know who you are, I don't know why they wouldn't. You're kind of a staple in the 2A community, fighting for gun rights, actually going up to DC and testifying before Congress. You got yourself into a little bit of were you in hot water, or did you kind of just set it off?
What are you talking about?
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's double back to that. Definitely stay tuned to hear a little bit more about that. But let's talk about who you are. Who are you? What are you doing? Why is it unique?
Yeah, so I, for those who are Nigerian, I'm gonna put a plug in there. So, I was maiden name is Antonia Oakafor. I'm gonna say it, especially if I'm talking Nigerians. It's like, okay, don't say it the non-Nigerian way, but
Of course.
Antonia Oakafor, right? Married now, so Antonia Oakafor. Married and have two beautiful children, but going into the Second Amendment world, starting this go a decade, like almost a decade now. 2015, I actually grew up primarily anti-gun. And it wasn't until I went to college and realized that if I truly was at that time very much a feminist on the left, and if I truly wanted to empower myself and other women, then I had to become a Second Amendment activist. I had to become an advocate for that and make sure that I could, defend myself and defend other people that I care about. And that also my female peers could do the same, especially because they're women. So that kind of started, that was 2015. Helped out with, passing campus carry, which is concealed carry on college campuses in Texas. And that kind of started my quote unquote career or activism rather in the Second Amendment community, did stuff with NRA for a while. I never officially, but did videos and stuff like that, telling my story. And then I started my own organization, Empower 2A, which is very focused on, bringing the conversation around feminism and female empowerment and bringing it into the Second Amendment space. So started that in 2017 and been doing that ever since. And now it's part of Gun Owners of America, and I'm the National Director of Women's Outreach for GOA. So let's sum it up just a little bit of my story.
So kind of a big deal. We appreciate you for your hard work and your dedication to making sure that people understand that not only is it their American rights per se, it is their God-given rights to protect and defend their life with every ounce of their being, with the most effective tool available, which is firearm. And that's a big deal, and we're thankful for that. I do want to talk about, I suppose, what that kind of sometimes looks like, what that entails, maybe some of the difficulties that you've had in the space, like navigating.
Yeah. Where do I start?
Where do we start?
Okay. So I guess there's, again, like, even I already started off with something people are like, wait, what? She's about that? Like, there's some people, whenever I say feminism or feminist or
Right.
anything like that, that's the, several circles, right? I'm a born again Christian, so definitely can't say feminist in those circles.
Right.
Right.
And shoot, I
And
mean,
all,
shoot,
all
even
unlight
in public,
fun.
sometimes it's difficult to say that just because people are like, "Oh, you identify with this specific religious group, then that
Right.
means you're
Oh,
hateful against everyone."
right. I mean, on both
Automatically,
sides, right? I get
automatically.
it from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you say you're a feminist, mostly you're getting it from the right. You're like, no. But I mean, from the left too, because you're not the right type of feminist. So
Right.
I just get it from both sides. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm a born again Christian. I think that's important stuff. Like I said, I'm married, I have 2 kids, but born again Christian, and actually started my trajectory of um, being passionate about justice and being passionate about standing up for those who are the most vulnerable and defenseless. And so that changed my view in a lot of different areas, but particularly with being pro Second Amendment, was that I know because I'm a sexual assault survivor myself, so I know that I've been since I was a young child. So I've always had this mindset of, I don't say a survival mindset, but essentially like I'm a survivor, and I have a mindset that I'm never gonna be a victim again. And that was that crossed anything to do with political ideology, etc. But I always had that innate, I need to take care of myself. I also grew up, my dad went to prison when I was around the same age, actually 5 6 years old. So I grew up a single mother. I was the oldest of 4, so I was just very much, I need to take care of myself. And so that, I think, was a projection of how I got into the feminist movement. Even when I was on the left, though, or said I voted Democrat or whatever, I never felt completely secure in that movement. But it was especially when I started asking questions about my safety, especially on college campuses, because at that time it was 2015, 2011, 2012. So Obama was in office, and he was pushing a survey, a study on campus sexual assault. And that became a huge topic for me, obviously, as a sexual assault survivor. So that pushed me to like think of actual solutions, because I was sick and tired of all of the conversations being about what can we do to the men most of the time after the fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all the perpetrators, rather. And so it wasn't ever about what can the women do. Yes, we're not victim blaming, but what can I do if I ever have to be in that situation? Like, is the only solution for me literally the school administration giving me a rape whistle when I was a freshman in
Mm-hmm.
orientation, right? Like, that was the only, and this is Texas. This is Texas Public University. Like, the only real solution I was allowed to have was a rape whistle, which was, you're lucky someone hears you after the fact. The police show up, it's after the fact. Like, I'm been a victim of sexual assault before. I'm not going to be one again. Like, so that, I think, led me to a lot of, again, became a Christian at that time too, born again Christian. So a lot of that, my mindset was, I want to protect myself, I want to protect other people, and I'm not going to wait for other people to tell me how I can do that. So I just wanted to be a voice for those people. And so that led me to the Second Amendment. That led me to wanting to defend myself, of realizing as a student, where I spent most of my time, that I couldn't defend myself, because in Texas, again, Texas was supposed to be pro gun state. Um, didn't have campus carry. I couldn't carry. So I became the Southwest director for Students for Concealed Carry. Um, help pass that law and implement it in 2015, 2016. But for me, it was always, and it always has been, that root, that thread of, I want to protect the most defenseless and vulnerable. And women are physically, pound per pound, we have less lean muscle mass than men. And so I wanted to be a part of doing some actual change in the movement that I had
Mm-hmm.
held dear for so long.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Just kind of coming from like I want to say post feminist, but I feel like that's an actual term. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it, Coming out of like a feminist, purely feminist mindset to like now, because of your passion for women. Now you're like, I want to arm them and equip them with the best possible tools in whatever given situation, so that they don't have to be a victim. And thank you, by the way, for sharing that vulnerable time in your life. I know that you've shared it quite often, but I don't want it to be lost that that is a very intimate part of your life that you don't have to share with anyone. So I thank you for sharing that with us. But
Absolutely. No, it's a blessing. It's hard, but God has given me the platform to share it. Um,
mm,
and I'm thankful that I can. So thank you. Thank you, though.
absolutely, we're thankful as well. Now, I think it is interesting to kind of admit, because the world has been in a really weird place the last several years, even
Yeah.
before kind of the rise of the most recent things that are interesting and difficult to handle. Where in the more recent past, it was like, hey, yeah, women can join the military and be in combat roles
Mm.
and things like that. And I'm not here to discuss that necessarily, but you went and said like, hey, women pound for pound, men have every advantage when it comes to pure combat. That men have a specific advantage over women, and that's not, at least from what I've heard, that's not traditionally like a feminist point of view, where women can do everything men can do and men can compete with women. And even now into more recent conversations that, people are arguing about athletics and men and women, and not even
Mm.
to touch on that, but I think it is interesting to really sit here and realize that, you know a man that's my height, 5'11", and a woman that's my height, 5'11", if I can't beat the brakes off of her, like physically, like something's actually wrong. Like I should be able to do that just with the way I'm
Mm-hmm.
biologically designed. Um,
Right.
and like I said,
Yeah.
I'm
And you're
not here
designed to
to,
protect her.
and I believe that fundamentally, and I'm not here to attack anybody or make any sort of statements on those things. But I think it really is interesting to understand that when we're talking about firearms, we're not just saying we just want to give women carte blanche, or authority to just smoke every guy who looks at them funny
Mm-hmm.
just because they can. Like, this is
Right.
actually necessary oftentimes because women are
Right.
smaller.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you said that, because that is a lot, in more or less terms, a lot of the gun control side. When you hear them and their arguments about, especially like, they don't like, first of all, they don't like the fact that we have all these numbers of women, right? Even before 2019, before the pandemic, before Harvard and Georgetown, how they all these like literally studies coming out month after month now, still coming out, showing that there are 8 million, and that's again a conservative number, 8 million new gun owners were a result from the pandemic. And of those 8 million, 48% of them are women, right? That's conservative numbers, very conservative numbers. So the 8 million, 48 million are women. And yet, if you start and start paying attention to, like, when you hear any type, especially on them, even if it's kind of neutral, like, they'll always talk about the inevitable, right? Like, of course, it's in your face that those are the statistics. You're seeing more women buy firearms, but every time it's on the news or anything like that, there always going to be a caveat of, oh, but there are also other statistics that women, when they have a firearm, more than likely it's going to be used against them than being used in self-defense, etc. Or, it's just not a good idea for a woman to have. Like, it's stuff that you,
Super
especially on the
condescending.
right,
Yeah.
condescending, patronizing, just everything, anti-feminist, sexist, like all of the stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they use that so much just to ignore the reality that it makes sense that a woman would want to use a firearm to be able to have equality in the physical sense, right?
Right.
So, anyways, it's just interesting you were talking about that, because that's a lot of the stuff that I hear, but it's from the gun control side. It's from people who don't want women to equate, especially not to feminism. They don't want to
Mm-hmm.
equate pro Second Amendment, pro gun to feminism, even in the mainstream or leftist sense, right? But they are almost completely going the opposite of what scientifically is there, of when it comes down to why we're made the way we are made, and how that impacts our, I mean, I'm going to go into everything, impacts like how we interact with each other. But yeah, all I have to say is when you said that, it triggered something in me a little bit of like the type of stuff I hear a lot of the gun control say a lot about women and
Yeah,
firearm ownership.
I think it's fascinating because at the end of the day, 9mm doesn't really care about your muscle mass. It does what it
Right.
does.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a big proponent of like, oh, we should just go around killing people. I think that's horrible
Right.
and sad. And I think honestly, and here, I think maybe some people might cringe for hearing me say this. I think a lot of people who are anti-gun are coming from a good place in their heart. Like they really don't want to see more people hurt.
Yeah.
Guns are
I was
kind of violent.
anti-gun.
Yeah.
I was anti-gun. Yeah, absolutely. It and honestly, and then people are like, "What was the big moment?" Okay, sure, like feminism, all of that,
Mm.
absolutely. But essentially, at the end of the day, it was one day realizing, "Hey, I want a gun," but from what I always think about guns, it's always bad guys with guns. But if I have a gun, I'm not a bad guy. I can use a gun. Okay, I should use a gun. Why not? Like it
Mm.
was, that was a logical thinking there. It was
Wow. Just a
at
pure,
one point,
pure
at
logic
one
stream.
point,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. It's not second the answer. It's not. It's just. It's not. I guess it's epiphany. It's epiphany in the fact of like flip the switch, right?
So I did want to talk a little bit about something that you've talked about before, and that is not specifically the Ahmaud Arbery situation, but I've heard you speak about this on a couple different occasions, and I think it's really interesting because being um, somebody who's clearly black, I mean, if someone sees you, they're like, oh yeah, she's a black woman, um, Nigerian descent. That's awesome. You live in America. You're pro gun. We love that. You work with organizations that may be considered more right leaning, but yet your positioning, at least the initial positioning, when it came to the Ahmaud Arbery situation and other cases that I guess were kind of used as political, I guess, chips, such as like George Floyd and other situations. I'm not sure of all the situations that you've spoken out on, but I know that you took a considerable amount of heat for um, having a position that was counter to, I guess, the right leaning pro gun narrative.
Mm.
Can you discuss that a little bit? I guess just kind of talk about that because I'm curious. Like, as somebody who is clearly black, and I don't know how much of that impacts your day to day living. I hope not too much, but sometimes it can, and people don't get that.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think what you were saying was so controversial? First of all, and I guess how did it make you feel on the inside knowing that people were fighting so hard against you and kind of painting you as something that maybe you weren't?
Mm. Yeah, man, I really don't even think I'm that. I don't think I'm that controversial, so that's why it's like,
No, you're not.
I mean, I'm not. But I guess there are times where I was like, look, I need to say something, and so specifically with Ahmaud Arbery and I might have said some stuff about George Floyd. It was kind of all with Elijah McClain. Like there was just a time, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, it was summer 2020, fall of 2020. That was a pretty contentious time. But what I tried to do was at least stay. I mean, for example, well, I said it. I say that. Oh, I'm not sure if I said anything about George Floyd. I did go. I did go over there, and I went and helped out with cleaning and stuff like that
Wow.
because it was the rioting and everything. Like literally, like even black owned businesses were being ransacked and closed down.
That's
So I
horrible.
went over there and we were able to do a cleanup and stuff like that. I just wanted to add some positive. So I wanted to add some positivity, but I did. I was sick of it. Like I think a lot of people were sick of it, but other and to be able to help was, I think, healing. Um, but with Ahmaud Arbery, it was specifically, I think, even more so. I mean, definitely more so than George Floyd. It was a self defense conversation that we would have kept and been very clear, but also kept having when it came to Ahmaud Arbery, if of course he was alive,
Mm-hmm.
and if he had a firearm. But it was a situation where these two men. or three, right? But really two men who were in that scenario, with Ahmaud, who had a firearm and weren't doing it correctly. I mean, just in many different ways. They were approaching someone, and I just say as a gun owner, right? Because I'm thinking as a, maybe I think as an instructor, I think of just how discriminated against we are as gun owners. I don't know if people understand that we are, but for the most part, even when it comes to the law, we're guilty until proven innocent. We're not innocent until proven guilty, for gun owners. So I'm very hard on people, especially when they're breaking the law or doing something against what a gun owner should be doing. And so even in the video, the scenario, as a gun owner, I was upset because of how that situation was handled. But obviously, and then of course, even after that, I mean, I saw pretty quickly that it was a racist issue, and particularly actually a racist issue. I mean, now we have the evidence in many different facets of the law to show that it was a very racist issue. That's the reason why he was killed. Was nothing to do with him jogging or anything like that. Like some people wanted to paint him as someone who was not that he wasn't jogging, but rather that it was him. What was the whole thing in the beginning?
Stealing,
a lot of people wanted to make it stealing or trespassing. Found out all of that was not the same person. All of that wasn't true. But even so, again, even so, in Georgia, all of those laws that were all of the excuses that people had were, one, there were, a lot of them were false. A lot of, as a gun owner or someone who knows the law, especially in places like Georgia, for example, not saying an expert or an attorney, that just was not going to be applied there. It just wasn't. And so coming out against even those specific things, people were upset with me for even bringing about those type of conversations. But then even on top of that, because it was legitimately racism, it was a time where, look, people who were showing their colors were showing their colors. Let's just say that. They were showing it, and like, I want to give you the benefit of the doubt. I really do. I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, you're in, gun rights field. Like, how are you not a contentious person, or you don't want to talk about that type of stuff? Like, I honestly don't try to be in those spaces of trying to just get people upset and riled up. But if my whole thing is consistency of it's Sonny Johnson who talks about conservatism applied, equally applied. A shout out to Sonny Johnson. If you don't know her, she's awesome. But she's awesome. She's different than me for sure. But she's very consistent in her conservatism. And I think that's what Black conservatism is, honestly, because it's a way of life. And that's what a lot of us as Black people grew up with. We just never labeled it. But anyways, in this sense, it was conservatism equally applied. And I've said, and I was supportive of Kyle Rittenhouse, right? Just as much as I was supportive of Ahmaud Arbery. And two different situations, obviously. But when it came down to the law, it came down to the rights that those people had, when it came down to also the just fluff that media that on different sides of it, on different views, wanted to paint their own point of view because they were Black or because they were white. If we're just being consistent there, then you have to say, as a gun owner, as someone who's pro Second Amendment for everyone, that Ahmaud Arbery, if you're alive, should have had the same trial and success that Kyle Rittenhouse would have had. And that shouldn't be controversial. But unfortunately, there are people who just showed their colors and just showed like they are okay with the Second Amendment for certain people. And most of the time it's for people that they want to cheer on, whether it's white, whether it's a certain political ideology, whether it's a certain background. That's not okay. And I've been very vocal as a Black person. I get heat a lot of when people who are putting racism when they shouldn't put it on, like, for example, on Kyle Rittenhouse, when that doesn't apply, but just because they have an idea of this person because of their color of skin, then they're going to place different things on them. And I said that was wrong. And I call that out. And I was supportive of Kyle Rittenhouse. Same thing with Ahmaud Arbery. When it's very clear like that, and also proven in many different ways, let's just be clear, that there's racism, that also as a gun owner, you don't do things in that way. And also and the fact that people were suspecting him for malicious intent for doing other things that, let's just be what it is common for a lot of Black people to have to, or Black women, like Black men or Black women have to, again, feel like they're guilty until proven innocent. In those situations that was applied there, that was wrong too with Ahmaud Arbery. So that's what I see, is that when you can be consistent, when you have the opportunity to show the anti-gun side and the left, like that's what I think of it as, is like, okay, this is the opportunity. It's clearly gun, pro-gun, like, but here we can say like, look, we're on your side too, because this is a gun issue, right? And then people are watching, I know they do, and then they see how inconsistent you're being. That's when they start saying, look, it's not even about that. It's not even about the single issue. It's not about the Second Amendment. It's about you thinking that certain people should have rights and other people can't have the same rights applied. So that's that's on the outreach community, on people who are trying to change hearts and minds. Those are the times where I'm just like, I need to say something. Sure, I'm gonna get flagged, or I'm gonna get people upset with me. I'm gonna get people, and they did call me a place of employment telling I need to be fired, like, because of that.
I bet. And
like,
people are wild. People are wild, man. I don't know. Like, what's up with the tactical Karens calling
oh no, tactical Karen! Oh my goodness,
trying to get Antonia fired because she doesn't toe the line that you think she should. Get out of town. Get out of town. Like, equal justice under the law for everyone.
Absolutely.
And if you can't do that, then what are you doing? Like, you don't actually believe in this stuff until it's inconvenient for your actual worldview. And I'm not here just trying to call everyone who has ever been suspicious of a Black person a hardcore racist. I think some people are just tone deaf. Some people are extremely tone deaf, but sometimes it's so telling. A big reason why I brought up Ahmaud is because I think there was some new thing that came out for his case, or some additional rehearing or appeal that happened. And there was some conservative commentator continuing to go on and on about how, oh, this is something of the left and they're doing this and those guys were railroaded. And it's like, guys, why are we still going on about this? Why are we equating him with everything bad in the world? The man is dead. He's not here to tell his story.
Right. Exactly. That was my whole thing, is that, like, yeah, I wish he had a firearm, because if he had a firearm, we would be having the same conversation we have in Kyle Rittenhouse, but at least he's alive.
Yeah.
Right. Hopefully. And that was another thing too. I mean, there are so many nuances and realities. Again, another Sunny Johnson was having a really good conversation about this a couple of days ago. And she was talking about the fact that there are people who just don't want to believe the bad history of America, because then they think America is no longer exceptional. And then someone was saying, like, no, but exceptionalism doesn't mean that you're perfect, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with you. Obviously, as people, individuals, humans, we're not perfect. And we never will be until, and there's so many, as a Christian, what I'm talking about. But what it comes down to it is that exceptionalism is that you are set apart, right? Set apart in the sense that you are exceptional, better than other countries in that sense. Doesn't mean that you're perfect, but although you've had bad history and bad issues, you also had very good, and there's things that for us to aspire to. So yeah, there's sin in the world, first of all, period. Like, that's it. Like, that's still happening. And through history, Americans have been part of sinning in certain ways, like in racism. Just like every other country, every other person with sin. But they did that with racism, with slavery. Absolutely. All of that is true. All of that is egregious in our history. And there are people who recently had people like that in their history. Maybe they are one of that, part of the problem, sure. But you also have the ability to do good, and we've done good in our life, and we've done good in our country. And so, because unfortunately some people don't want to face the fact that there's evil and that we've done bad things and that happened, and still can be a great country even though we're growing, um, then they don't want to hear about the fact when there are evil individuals who do evil things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think about it just like, and that's why I think my faith, my Christian faith really was pivotal. My being born again and knowing the principles of being Christian, knowing what sin was, knowing all of that helped me realize that there are individual people who are going to do individual evil things, right? And although we're all sinners, there are individual people who do evil things. There are also individual people who do beautiful, good things. And you can use a tool, and that person can use it for evil and they can use it for good. But it's a tool. It has nothing to do with the person, the object. It has nothing to do with the person, really. I mean, it does have to do with the person, but it has to do with the actions that person takes on with that tool. So the same thing is, yeah, sure. There are white people who were part of racism. It doesn't mean that when I bring up something about racism, especially in this circumstance, I try to stay single issue when I can, but especially in a circumstance that it was clearly as individuals, just because they're white doesn't mean you guys are kin, right? Like
Right.
those individual white people decided to do an evil thing based on evil intent they had in their heart. We should call that out, and that should be something that is calling out, should be celebration of calling out evil when we see it, bringing it to the light, not something that we're trying to hide and keep in the dark to somehow not be affiliated with it. You're not affiliated with it. You're not that person. So take that off of you and be okay with calling out the evil people who do individually evil things. Because if anything, that's going to help you stand out and be separate apart from those type of people. So I just think people just need to, and I do think that is part of the extreme on the other side of people calling everybody racist, right? Like just the sensitivity of, oh my goodness, because I'm white, I must be racist. So I'm also, the way I'm going to deal with it though is I'm going to be like colorblind, right? Quote unquote, or I'm not going to see it because I don't want to be associated if someone knows that I know what's going on.
Right. And ends up turning into the super patronizing person who will strip you of your rights and put you in a corner and tell you to sit down if you go against any sort of party line that they've established to keep you safe.
Right. And that's how we see it on both sides. Like I saw it on the left.
Yeah.
I saw on the left. I mean, there's race. I mean, it's just so obvious. Like it's a different way that they do racism or patronize. Like, so it has nothing to do with political party. It's all to do with sin, and how you package it is just different.
It's incredible. I appreciate you sharing all of that, especially considering, and that's a hard place for you to be. And I can appreciate the difficulty that comes with that, where a lot of the people that you have to see on a daily basis, a lot of people that count on you and work with you, and the people who watch you and quote unquote respect you, they may heavily disagree with you. And unfortunately, in the 2A space, if we disagree, it's war. It's
right.
Extremely toxic in that sense. Like, whoa. And speaking of disagreeing and war in the 2A space, you recently went to Congress to testify. And I talked to Diana recently, for those of you who have seen that episode, where she kind of talked about the three major rifle manufacturers in the U.S., including Daniel Defense, who most notably got called out for being some sort of traitor or whatever. And just, I guess a super quick recap is Smith & Wesson, Ruger, Daniel Defense, they were all called up there, and some of you guys went up to testify as well. And they were basically asked to talk about their marketing practices, so on and so forth. A lot of that's nonsense. Maybe somebody had a point to be made, and many points were not made. That said, I suppose they were scanning over your social media as a good opposition researchers should do. And they
That's
were
true.
like, oh, wow, she's actually for the 2A. And generally, being for 2A means that you're like, F the ATF. That said, they were like, so, Miss Antonia, we see here on July 30th for your entire existence, you have said that you're not for the ATF and you think we should abolish it. And you were like, what did you say?
I said yes. Period. No, I just say.
He
I
said,
wish I could have did
period.
that. Period. Yeah, yeah. Well, some people were like, you should have explained more. I was like, first of all, they're gonna try and mess. Yeah, I know the tactics that they're gonna have. Can I go back to like the
Sure.
day, like that whole thing and that whole
Yeah,
like
talk
ridiculousness?
about it.
So I remember this was 6 hours. I was in there for six
That's a
hours,
long time.
not 5 minutes, not that was 6 hours. And like early on, there was like rumors hushing, right, going on, like, hey, you see that thing over there in the back, like that poster back there is like covered, like, so there's some people found out that there's a seal on there and it might be something to do with your account, like, so we were like just racking our brain, like what could it be, like I'm like,
That's
what did
torment.
I say, like, something like, okay, did you do this, okay, if this happens you say this, okay, all right, okay, go over there. And then he finally shows it and it's like, first of all, I'm like, he's like, Facebook. I'm like, okay, well, I haven't used Facebook in like it's like a year or so. So at least there's nothing bad there on that front. But it's to 2020. And essentially I'm thinking the worst. And like, so that you said to abolish the ATF. And I guess, and this is where I need to be careful because I'm getting to that point where it's just like, well, duh, in my head, obviously, like I'm a Second Amendment advocate. Of course, I'm gonna want to abolish the ATF. Like,
It's kind of a
that's just my
staple.
line of thinking.
It's like there's certain tenets, certain bullet points. If you're for guns, you should be,
Right.
9 mil is good, 22 is inferior.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Abolish the
Yeah, yeah.
ATF. Everyone full
380
autos.
just wants to be a 9 millimeter. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
all of that, all of that.
right.
Yeah, but that one abolished ATF. So it's like, yeah, I'm a Second Amendment. Why would I want an agency that literally only exists to infringe upon my rights?
Right.
Anyways, so all that to say, I was laughing when you were talking about Daniel Defense and everything. Again, I came there partly they wanted me to speak because they had, of course, and they were not in the room. I think that part was
Virtual.
obvious. Yeah, they're
Right.
virtual. All the manufacturers were virtual. I don't think Smith and West, I always get them mixed up. Someone did
Smith
not
and
come.
Wesson didn't even show up.
Smith and Wesson didn't show up.
Gangster.
Ruger and Daniel Defense did. Yeah. Um, and then we had the Giffords campaign, which is a guy who used to be a Kimber executive, Boosie, and then we had another woman.
The Giffords campaign,
yeah.
is that anti-gun or?
Yes, the Giffords. They're the ones. She's the one who was shot. She used to be an Arizona congressman, and she was shot in the head. I don't know.
I heard about that.
It was like years ago. She became anti-gun.
Wow.
So the Giffords campaign, and then the Brady campaign, which is well established, and then it was me. And I was gonna come on as mostly instructor because I was a firearm instructor, worked with women, AR-15s through that. And of course, as a gun rights like advocate, I'm just establishing this because people always ask, like, were you like there to help the gun manufacturers, and like, no, we were separate, and obviously I was more on their side. Well, I thought. And they were more on my side. So when all I have to say, I brought that up because that was the interesting thing, was that like, here are several hours later, and then they're like kind of grilled because I said, yeah, I want to abolish the ATF. A bureaucratic, unelected body, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So then they get mad. Like, again, every single person on that panel, right, that gets asked questions, and it was always something like you didn't see on it was always something like, how dare you want to abolish ATF? And then they start asking them because they're just like, basically it was like the climax of like, okay, she wants to abolish the ATF. I need to know from you guys don't want to abolish the ATF, right? And I'm just
Sounds
like
brilliant.
of course. is 6 hours of bullying. It was uncomfortable. But it was just me like completely like in my zone of like, this is the part, because I even said, I was like, Daniel Defense, I have a Daniel Defense, I have several, and it's a great rifle. And I'm like, this is a great opportunity for them to like be on. You know what? Antonia said she bought the ATF. We're on her no, the opposite, right? So I'm just like, man, now I just really feel like that one weirdo in the room,
Right.
like you're really crazy. Like that's how I felt after that.
Wow.
So, anyways, that was a shortened version again of the 6 hour hearing, but it was interesting. It was just like I just felt personally, I was like, oh,
so were
okay,
you
cool.
it sounds like you were kind of shocked that they didn't kind of go down that path with you, being like, yeah, we're really not for the ATF. We don't think they're super legitimate. We obey their rules, but they kind of suck,
Well, again, it's just like me feeling like 6 hours of them like grilling them, like like the questions asking them, like Daniel Defense, who only manufactures rifles, and asking how many rifles,
Yeah,
how many are
actually
part of
watched
your
some of it. Yeah,
you did, okay,
it's like, what percentage of your income has been rifles? And he's like, I don't know, I'd have to get back to you on that. It's
I'd
like,
be like, all of it.
how many ARs do we have? Okay, we make 20 billion AR-15s, a few AR-10s.
Right.
Let's say a
Right.
strong majority. What do you think?
Yeah.
Like, so what are you asking me? Like, what are you actually asking me? Are you trying to say, do I have a vested interest in making sure ARs are around forever? I mean, yeah.
I mean, just say it. So a lot of that was like, okay, fine, fine. But then it was like, but because of all of this, right? It was just after hammering on the details, on the numbers, on the blah blah. And if anything, I was like, man, this is a great case against the ATF. Of course, I hate of course I want to boss the ATF. Come on, this whole thing was because of the ATF. No, at this time I'd never.
Right.
That woman's crazy. Like that's basically what
now
is what I felt the whole thing. So
it's been said that excuse me. It's been said that the reason why they didn't basically say like, yeah, abolish the ATF is because they would like to stick the ATF with the responsibility of handling all their regulatory stuff. If the guns get into the hands of somebody who is intending to do evil, that it's not their fault. They're not in charge of making sure that bad people don't get guns. The FBI does background checks. The ATF tracks guns that they feel like are going into the bad hands. So they'd like us to believe, not just going around harassing homeowners, trying to
killing puppies,
killing puppies, burning down, entire basically
red flagging people,
compounds of people, children, women.
That too.
The perfect track record, exceptionalism,
basically.
In every essence of the word.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Am I kidding?
Yeah. Maybe. No. I was waiting for you to keep going with it because I was, because again, I don't want to be that person who I from 2010 and I'm looking back and like, I mean, maybe I probably would actually. I probably would be like, who are you? Like, I probably would because I'm very different than who I was in 2010. But I'm trying not to be too detached of why people think this does not make logical sense. But yeah, sure, I understand that I want to do this because such and such. But you're in Congress and this is your opportunity to take a stand. Sure. I mean, the biggest thing I heard was, oh, well, they don't want the ATF sniffing around. There's the ATF is sniffing around.
That's what they do.
Please.
Yeah.
This is not saving you from that. So, I mean, I think we have to take, I mean, I've seen that with people in Congress and you have to take a stand. And if you really believe that stuff, don't tell me that stuff on paper or tell me individually when you have the opportunity to literally change people's hearts and minds on that. And also, by the way, because there's unity in numbers to be yeah, I'm not a fan of the ATF because they put restrictions on the gun owners that I'm trying to make sure that they are equipped to be able to have access to defend themselves and their lives. Like, take it in the ownership of, I am not here as someone that you want me to be, because that's what they were there for, right? People brought them there. They orchestrated it to make it seem like the gun manufacturers were the evil people. I had a young girl who came up to me. I mean, if she had kept going, I think security probably would have taken her out. But when I was sitting on the panel, or sitting down, one of the sisters of the victims of Uvalde, I mean, they had Uvalde last minute, guys. Also, by the way, there was not supposed to be anybody behind us, especially on our side. We didn't have anybody on our side because the night before they decided suddenly that we're gonna fly in and have a video with the survivors of Uvalde, the survivors of Highland Park. Like, so all very orchestrated, all very manipulative. And they had one of the, and I you can see the person behind, you can see his sad eyes. Like, I just, as a parent, I can never.
I couldn't imagine. Yeah.
And it just made me even more upset because, again, it's still for political gain. It's not, is it really about how you care about that person? But they're just so good at making it seem like we're the evil people. And I knew that those people came in, were flown in, right? Because they are going to think that, I mean, to believe that I'm the evil person. I'm the evil person representing these evil people who can't just deal. Yeah. Right. And so this girl comes behind me and gives me a, I think it was a prayer sheet. I think she was Catholic. It reminded me of a lot of the prayer sheets, like when you're Catholic, of her, like, I hope, because I just said something about, being a mother and wanting to protect my children. And that's why I want to be a gun owner and defend our gun rights. And she's like, or your kids have to um, stare down a firearm, under at the end of the barrel, like my sister did, like,
wow,
like, and then leaves. I mean, this girl is like maybe 10, like stuff like that.
She
like,
said she hopes that you.
She said, I hope you never have to have your kids have to stare down the end of the barrel like my sister did, and she was one of her sister was one of the victims of Uvalde.
Wow,
and
that's horrible.
I mean, first of all, Uvalde, out of all the other school shootings and all the other mass shootings, that was clearly police officers, law enforcement, who didn't do their job.
Right.
The fact that we were there having conversation was, if you guys want more actual change to happen right now, like, this is how I know that this is completely messed up. We should be having a whole thing on all of the logistics and the things that broke down that failed the children in that school for over 2 hours plus, that let them bleed out. And it's so clear, but yet the first conversation we have after every one of these things is always gun control. And it completely distracts people from the real issues. And then it happens again. And then people wonder why we're in the same mess. And it's just this literally insane cycle that is heart-wrenching, because there are individuals left behind after the political campaigns are over, when the midterms are done. I mean, they only set up these hearings because of midterms. Because honestly, it is because they had a runoff between the two Democrats. It had Democrats of two committees, and there was an assault weapons ban committee, and this person decided to have a last minute committee, this oversight hearing. And it's all because they want to be looked at as the most anti-gun person, and they want to win a position for a midterm, not because they care about the individual who, after all of that is done and you don't talk to them again, live with the heartbreak of what is going on in their life, because their family member is gone, because of institutionalized continual insanity cycle of putting policies that don't work, that don't actually save people's lives. Right. So anyways, like, all of that.
It's extremely difficult, and you have to go in there and sit there for 6 hours and try to deal with all of that. Like, that is, I don't envy that position, and I respect you for being there and enduring it. and coming back to tell the tale, I suppose. Yeah, it's horrible, and I mean, even recently, I'm sure you heard about the situation in Thailand, where there was over 30 individuals. I believe most of them are likely children in a daycare, killed by some
former police officer in Thailand.
I maybe I'm getting my stories mixed up, but did he have like a modified like prop gun turned into a gun, or was he able to have that gun? Maybe I'm confused my stories, but and a knife.
That one's I know you're saying, because I feel like there was another one internationally that was similar, and they used a prop gun. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
I may be confusing my story, but this guy used a gun and a knife and killed over 30 people.
Right.
And it's horrifying. It's like I don't know what the moral of the story is. Like I don't think there is any moral except for like, do demons exist and do they take over people's bodies to commit such horrible acts? And what's the answer except to stop these people where they stand? Like immediately. Absolutely. And the fact that we go back to Uvalde and those poor children taken. They had their whole life ahead of them, and they were taken, and the people who swore to protect that city and the children in the city as their own children refused.
Exactly. And not even more so, they blocked people who every time people are like, if I were the parent, I mean, I know if I were a parent, you don't know until you're there, but you're intentionally blocking people, parents.
They're lucky that all those cops are okay. Like there's a lot of things that could have happened. I'm surprised no one got hurt in the process.
Right. That is true.
None of the people who should have been throwing their bodies in the way of the trouble, which, you know, it's so crazy that our brains like grasp for straws, creating conspiracy theories. Oh, what happened? Is this or this? Is this or that? And it's like, I don't know. Maybe not, but I know what happened. A lot of kids died. And it's not because guns are allowed. A lot of kids died for a few reasons, including the fact that this kid, crazy person, monster, whatever you want to call him, wasn't detected properly with all the methods that are already allowed for you to detect these people and figure it out. And then when the opportunity came for somebody to excuse my language, nut up and go take care of the situation, they refused. They were like, I'm good. I want to live. Well, I want to live too, but if someone kicks in my door, I'm getting between whatever the issue is and my children, because they're going to be okay, even if I die in the process. I'm going to make sure it's taken care of.
Absolutely.
And that's just, and I'm not saying that because I think I'm some hero. I don't. That's just the job. It's the job.
Exactly. And when people, I mean, that kind of brings me into arming teachers, right? Which I've always believed in.
It's controversial.
It's controversial, but it doesn't. Again, I'm a parent too. Yeah. I mean, I've been a parent since Uvalde, but after Uvalde, I was like, my first reaction was calling, what's your security system like, and where are the armed guards? Like that was my my conversation, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, he's no longer in that daycare anymore. Literally, no longer in that daycare. But their whole thing was, oh, it's okay. The next week, NRA convention comes in. I want you guys to know that we have another armed guard to protect us from the NRA convention. Okay. Incredible. Again, you're missing the point. The people that you want to be protecting, like that should have been an answer a week ago, at least. Of an armed guard is there to protect the children in there, and the teachers are going to be that first line of defense in every even if we have 2 armed guards, whatever. At the end of the day, there are more teachers than there are armed guards, and if a teacher who can and uses that, and a lot of them do have a concealed carry or whatever firearm outside of that daycare or that school because they're not allowed to have a gun in the school. If they're able to do that off campus, why can't they do that in that place where you and I trust my teachers to at least be good to them, to take care of them, to nurture them. I also would want and be happy if they use a firearm against someone and they were the line of defense in between my child and that attacker.
And
so that's the type of stuff. It's just, it makes sense.
Yeah. And I do want to make clear that I don't think that you're just saying like, hey, this person has a concealed carry permit, just let them carry a gun in school. Are you saying that?
No, I mean, I'm saying, even if you have a at home, right? Like there's certain training that you need to go through that has to take place for you to understand how to utilize that firearm in the right way at home. Just like, especially in a school. There's so many logistics to that. I mean, the fact that there's wall to wall, a classroom there, like your bullet goes through walls, right?
Well,
like that again.
I don't know.
Right. So, it's like at the end of the day, like it comes down to, you need to have the type of training that you would need in any scenario where you would have a firearm, right? So yes, you need the training that's going to be conducive to where you are, but at the end of the day, there are people not even letting them have just the firearm, period.
Sure.
Like, at least.
I actually, I think it's interesting. One of my cousin's wife works, or used to work at a school doing some work, but it wasn't during normal school hours. And because she was there for long periods of time, during odd hours, they were like, hey, we can put you through what they call in Texas a PPO training, which is like security, personal protection, bodyguard training, basically, which is pretty high level. It's not like SWAT team training, I don't think, but it's pretty high level, pretty intense, several weeks of a program. And I'm like, why don't we allow teachers who show an aptitude, an ability, a desire for it? Because not every teacher is going to want to do it. A lot of teachers, they eat salad for lunch, like they're not really like tough guy types. And I don't necessarily want a tough guy. I want somebody who's bold and ready to defend children with their life. Mm-hmm. And I don't want them to just stand there with a flashlight and be like, hey, this is my school district issued flashlight. I'm supposed to try to defend my life with this while you are armed with whatever you want to be armed with. Because contrary to popular belief, bad guys are not restricted to the types of arms that are commonly allowed and or legal. There are plenty, and for all of you people who don't believe me, there are plenty of modified guns out there on the streets that are capable of a lot more than the guns that I have. They exist. They're out there. And if you think that, just because they become illegal means that they're going away, they're not. They're not. I don't think I should have to explain this. So that said, I do think that we should, I guess, figure out, like, create a program, at least like pilot it somewhere where it's like, okay, can we ask at least a majority of the parents, are they okay with, let's run this program, let's see if we can't pick, if there's 10 teachers, can we pick 3 random teachers, train them, teach them, and say like, hey, this is the protocol. If something happens, go into action and try to keep the school safe while we're waiting for the police, and then have a response plan for that. There are plenty of people who this is their life's work, is defending schools and educational facilities, where they take the risk assessments and they try to teach the schools how to respond. And the understanding is someone's going to get hurt, but like, can we respond quickly? Because the police, even officers can't respond that quickly.
Well, in Texas, and there's other states, Colorado actually has it too. There's several states that have as their version of called a guardian program. Texas has it where if in your school district you have the ability to arm your teachers to have the same, they have extraneous circumstances of training, etc. requirements.
So we have something.
So we have something. It's just that the school boards make that decision. So your school district is by school district. So, but that's when I tell people, like, if you want to, especially like the women, when I talk to them, like, you want to do something right now, you're tired of hearing about school shootings and stuff like that, go to your school board and ask them to change, to make your school district a guardian program. You can't activate it unless you have enough parents or people or citizens who like, we want this to happen. Again, though, this is why, voting is
this
important,
advocated
right?
for? Because I maybe heard about this in passing, but I really don't feel like this is really made a big deal in a sense where it's like, hey, we want to make sure that everybody really knows about this so we can ask, because this is Texas. I think most people would be cool with it as long as we could prove that, like, hey, these teachers, they're not just handed a Smith & Wesson bodyguard and said, hey, attaboy, go take care of business, Go hide in
Right.
your boot.
I mean, concealed carry owners are usually very well trained and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I mean, I want the ability to be able to do that regardless of training. But the fact of the matter is that that's already in place in Texas. The state of Texas has already said, yes, you can do this. And I want to say it's only 20, let me go the opposite way. I know that over 70% of schools districts do not have it implemented.
Interesting.
Again, though, this is why it's important, because I just gave you the answer. That your school board is elected, right? And I've been I've seen local elections. This is why it's so important to be involved in your local election. They make more of an impact in your everyday life. Those people are very anti-gun, and they have a lot of people in the higher ed all the way down into teaching, etc. A lot of them tend to put anti-gun people and other different things into local level, because those people will then go into a higher level, city council, then they go to state rep, all of those. And then you're like wondering, like, how did this anti-gun person become this federal congressman or whatever? Like, they started out early.
Right.
Oh yeah, in Texas. Like, I mean, for example, Sheila Jackson Lee, that's my representative.
Yeah, she is, isn't she?
As teachers,
as big as 10 boxes or heavy as 10 boxes. Is she crazy? Have you met her?
I have I haven't met her.
Okay,
I've been in the same spaces with her.
I'll give it to you after.
Right?
I just need you to know that she's crazy, and you should just bring your AR and put it in her hands. Ask her 10 boxes or not.
Yeah. And what boxes? That's what I want to know. Are they filled? Are they not?
10 empty boxes.
Right, empty boxes.
That makes sense. Know. Shoot.
Even if they were, but yeah, so you can do something. People are hearing right now, like, you can do something right now. Find out even your state has it. Like, again, Colorado has it. There's this great program called Faster Colorado, where it's Lauren Evans, but she started it, and she literally has trained people who are there just to train teachers to be the guardians, like to be able to have firearms. They have do free training for those teachers. So that's the type of stuff, though, right now, especially in the state of Texas, there, like, you can go to your school board and your school district, and especially when they're campaigning, and if they say they're conservative or whatever, they're like, okay, then implement the guardian program. Like, because the thing is, a lot of people will make it seem like the local level, there's not much power, there's not much they can do policy wise. It's just water and electric bills and utilities. No, like, a lot of your stuff, especially gun rights, that's a huge thing that can be overturned. The Gun-Free Zone Acts of K through 12. You have the opportunity on the state level and the local level, your school district, to right now go there and go to those meetings and say that you want that overturned and you want a guardian program.
Carry, so clearly,
constitutional carry is great, but that's still not going to do anything when it comes to your school. No, so that's the thing. It's like, but you can make that impact. You can make that impact now, and it could make a great impact in the hundreds of thousands in your school district, if not more.
Thank you for bringing that up. I think that's really important. I really hope that people listen to this, especially my Texas audience. If you're from Texas,
I got you, Texas.
Can y'all send me a message on the Instagram armed_atlas? Just let me know you're from Texas, because I'm curious how many of y'all are here and kind of willing to make differences in that way. I'm just curious to see who's part of this audience from here. Last thing I kind of want to talk about, if we have the time, you'll let me know if we need to cut it short, is I actually recently had a friend who was jogging and ran into a situation where it appears that she was almost kidnapped. She was able to get away, but clearly she was a bit frightened, and I got a phone call, asking like, hey, I need suggestions on guns because the situation just happened, and I'm like, okay, wow, this is a big deal. I've been talking to y'all about guns for a long time, but I'm not gonna say anything in that regard. What I'm trying to say is, I don't know if the conversation about guns starts with what kind of gun do I suggest. At least not in my, from what I've seen, what I've experienced in my firearms journey. And quick plug for the Armed Atlas YouTube channel, where we talk more specifically about gun things such as like everyday carry, what type of guns that I'm trying out, all that kind of stuff is cool. But go check that out, because I'm in the middle of brainstorming and having conversations with instructors about like, hey, listen, I want to create some educational material for my friends, people who maybe they don't live in my city, or maybe we just don't have time to link up and have a full 3-hour conversation about all the really important stuff that goes into firearms. Try to create something that's educational but concise, maybe a little entertaining, just because people need that, TikTok and whatnot. What
Right.
if your friend called you and said like, hey, listen, what gun should I buy? Like, where are you taking that conversation? What are you sharing with them? What are some of the important things that they need to know before they even start? Like, before you buy a gun, let's talk about these things.
Right. Woo. Yeah. I've had similar conversations. And you know what? It's unfortunately is the fact is that especially women, and I'm glad you brought this up, because I was going to bring up something about that too, about in regards to outreach, because especially women, they're not going to, I mean, it's the same thing, that they're not going to even think about the idea of or firearm ownership or anything like that, or even buying a gun, unfortunately, until something like that happens. Unfortunately, though, usually it's not a, oh, this almost happened. Usually it's a, I'm a survivor,
Yeah.
and I don't want to have this, I don't want this to happen again.
Yeah.
Ooh, the stories I've heard. Um, so I've had this conversation, and usually when someone asks me, yeah, they're like, I'm ready, I want to do this. Um, just know, first of all, there's trauma involved. So like a lot of people who are dealing with that, yes, it got to them to that point, but it also means that when the training starts or whatever, is that you got to be careful about how you're getting that person to continue to in that process or training or anything. You got to be more careful than you would with someone who's just like, I want to do this for fun. It seems like it's fun. Look, statistically, especially for women, 60%, like the reason that 60% of women who are gun owners have said that they want to be a gun owner or have a firearm is for self-defense. That's their number one reason. I'm gonna get fucked with this too in the gun world. That's fine. This is my experience. It's been several years too, and I thought because it was different when I first started. I didn't shoot a firearm until I was 25. I'm just like one of those women, right? Self-defense survivor. It is not fun for me. I'm just not going to the rec. I'm not. That's just not a. You know what? I'm really stressed. Like, yeah, I'm not saying it can't be the exception to the rule, but for the majority of the people, this is not a recreational thing.
Right.
This is not, as much as competition shooting and stuff is, that's great. It is, but for the majority of people, it's a need. It's a serious need, and they're not playing with it. Like, it's not a let's just hang out with the boys. But when you have the idea of where they're coming from, but that's also why it ends up being where those people who may be gun owners don't get involved in the two-way fight, right? Because they don't feel like they belong there. If you understand that this is life, like again, it's life or death, like seriously, and it has already been for some people, then that's going to help you understand that it's not recreational for them, it's self-defense. So that alone, I think, helps people narrow down like, okay, this is the type of gun you need. But at the end of the day, I'm not telling you what to get. You need to go to a gun range if you're close to them. Usually they're asking me. I'm way far away from them, so I can't. But if you're someone that you could technically take them or go or plan something, go help them. Go to the gun range together. Let them physically get different firearms to rent and shoot, grip, shoot everything. Let them do it and let them figure out what is best for them. Do not, I try to give some suggestions of where some people tend to like get the first gun and what people like. But at the end of the day, I always tell them, you need to go, if you're going to make this commitment, even just to start, you need to go to the gun range. You need to go to ladies' night or not, or whatever. You need to get rentals and you need to physically shoot those firearms and figure out what's best for you first. That's the first thing that you should do before you even think about buying a firearm.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Very good. Very good. Can we speak to mindset? Because in my personal just understanding of it, even dealing with people who I love, I'm like, they're like, hey, I'm thinking about getting a gun. I'm like, ooh. So...
What's that ooh for? I know. I understand you. There's so many things behind that.
My guy Daniel Accord once said this. Daniel Accord on Instagram. He's a great resource. Go check him out. He said, the most important thing with owning a gun is what's between the ears. If your mind isn't right, if you're not thinking like, okay, I'm going to get this firearm. I'm going to commit to training. I'm going to commit to making sure I'm being safe, which means I'm going to invest in a lockbox. I'm going to invest in a holster. I'm going to pay for a class. I mean, no one wants to pay for stuff. I'm going to pay for a class. I'm going to buy enough ammo to actually train, which might mean like 500 rounds for your first month and a half, 2 months. Hopefully, if you're actually shooting, you'll get through that. Between the years, like what's your mindset when it comes to that?
Ooh, that's good. Yeah, it's not a casual thing. So I guess, I mean, yes, sure, recreationally or sport wise, like you're invested in that, you're going to put money, you're going to put time. Sure. I mean, you're committed to that in that sense. But again, like that's another reason, like it's not, and so I go back to my time as a new gun owner in grad school, a student, like, I mean, even just for the permit process, still expensive. Like $100 for a college student is $100, right? Okay, and that's when they just changed it to 40, I think.
Shoot,
actually, no, they changed it after.
$100. That's what you mean, dog.
Right, that's true. I know, but some people are just like, I mean, the whole wars of like what type of guns people get, and blah blah blah.
I got my guys buying $2,000 guns. Those are mine.
Oh,
people think they're mine. They're not mine. Antonia.
Oh yeah, I did. I was like, ooh, you just have a staccato, like, and no. Ma'am. Now I don't have a okay. I don't know your life. Okay, yeah. But yeah. So even like the average like $300-$400 gun, right? We already like know what that typical. Yeah, I mean, I would go lower. Taurus, like
you can buy a $100 gun.
That's true. You can buy it $100.
You're gonna have problems with it. You're gonna have problems with it. Please don't do that.
Right. You can get a Honda Civic of guns, and and it's reliable. It's not flashy. It's affordable. Okay, we're just gonna go from there. A Honda Civic of guns. I'm not gonna say what those were. So a Honda Civic of guns, and then you go to the gun range and all of that stuff. Yeah, but you're still all of that. I mean, ranges, the fees. You're looking at hundreds, if not adding up quick to $1,000 at least of dollars, right? In Texas. Yeah. Now, like I forget until I'm like going to New York this, soon. And I forget. I mean, you can't even have a gun for most of the part, but like when you do try to get a gun or you try to get a permit, like that is a firearm in itself of the cost. Okay, on the nice level. So it's a commitment. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. It's a commitment, and knowing that there's a commitment associated with that, I believe that that is a mindset that's going to help you realize I'm investing. It's an investment, and you don't just leave investments, right? You pour into it. Maybe you back away for a little bit because it's a little much, right? But because the interest rates is going, or whatever, it's going back down, but you go back into it when you can. It's a lifelong thing. Take it slow. And give grace. Also, stay off social media for a time, because I mean, I'm already dealing with this still. Like, I'm still getting people who just like need to go on social media to tell you're doing things wrong. It's very discouraging. It is. So in the beginning, in this modern world, in your 2A journey or whatever journey, like the mindset, you need a positive one. You need to be around people who are positive. And sometimes that means you're not showing off your firearm or your new life for a little bit until you can get to a point. But it's all worth it. It's a journey, and it's a journey, but you do it the way that's safe and best for you. Like I tell people, when I was gonna do concealed carry for a week, like, I mean, because again, people just, you don't know the mechanics of it, right? Like you just hear about things like, oh, it goes off. Oh, or like, so you're just thinking, if I have it on me, what if it just goes off, right? Because the mechanics of it, most people are not even doing that much when it comes to training. They're not even talking about the mechanics of a firearm and why it wouldn't just go off.
All the internal safeties and what that actually means.
Absolutely. What that means, manual state, whatever. Like, so having a Glock with you versus not, like stuff like that. So like, but concealed carrying is like, even as a woman, like, I think it's still different, because if you're on body, I do think it's a little bit more intimate, because we're formed in a way that, like, when we have those options, look, it's just different. Okay, let's take my word.
I believe you. I believe you.
Yeah, thank you. So that can scare a person. That scared me. So for a week, I didn't have any ammo in my firearm. I just wanted to like take the first step and just have it on me, just to like see how it felt to have it on me. Like, can people see me? Like, I think people can, but they really don't. I just like all of that, again, mindset, like you have to get through it so then you can get to the next level, and then eventually it will become second nature. Like me, like I still remember 5-6 years ago where I was afraid to just even conceal carry. So
yeah,
it's that, but give yourself grace. You're not going to learn everything off the bat. The people who act like they were born knowing about firearms, I don't know who they are. Most of the time are ask the trainer, and you'll know that you're actually probably doing better than they are. Okay. And that is also why women actually usually tend to be better shooters than men. Ask a trainer, and it's because for the most part, they understand they're coming in as a student, and the humility of, just because I'm a man or not a man doesn't mean I just automatically know how this works. Okay. So a lot of women come into like, I don't know how this works. Teach me. I have no knowledge. I have no background. And those people do better. That's just for anybody. So that's how you should approach it.
That's awesome. Thank you for being really raw and honest with that. Cause being in the gun world, I know you just opened yourself up to people's criticism, the way people think, people's standard. It's like, oh, you're a gun rights activist, but the first time you ever carried your gun, it was empty. I was like, no. That's what she needed to do to get to a point where she could take it to the next level, And as things progress, you do things differently. Don't assume someone's journey is your journey. Just because, I'll tell you what, I know a lot of guys who, including myself, didn't carry appendix at first. And for me, I always felt like I could, like my shirt was riding up and people could see my gun, and I didn't want that. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, let me try appendix. And then I found a holster that actually worked. And we got to a point where it was suitable. And it was great. And then I met a lot of guys who were like, no, I don't want to point a gun down there. That's not going to work for me. 6 months later, they're like, this is great. It's comfortable. I'm faster. It's like, man, listen, I wasn't about to make fun of you. I was like, oh, man, well, you should definitely give it a shot. You should give it a shot. Like do it safely and responsibly, because I don't want you to end up like that guy from that video that's been going around the internet where the guy's like, I shot myself and I shot my dog. It's like,
No,
okay,
really,
Mr.
that
ATF.
happened?
Yes. This
Oh
man
no.
shot himself in the Johnson and also shot his dog. Poor dog.
Oh yeah, poor.
Like, I feel bad for you, but like only so much, because I know you were doing something wrong. You know,
Where's it? Okay, there's so many questions. So many
questions. I'm like, we're just watching the security feed of him like running back and forth. It was awful. He's like, drive, we got to go to the hospital. I'm like, oh, I feel bad. Anyways, I don't want to scare anybody who might be listening to this. It's generally, if you
wear
do
a
the
holster,
right thing,
guys.
get
Just wear a holster.
That's a holster that covers the trigger guard. I talked about this in my latest EDC video. If you see people carrying a gun without a holster, they're either ignorant, stupid, or both. Probably both. And so get a holster. They're not expensive. You can get a cheap one. I always recommend the more expensive ones just because I've found greater comfort and concealability with those. But we can start with the holster to at least keep you safe. Thank you so much for sharing with that. I know you did want to talk about outreach. I know we had mentioned it. I don't know if we covered all the bases with that. And I know you've got to rush over to your next interview with, was it New York, doing something with Vice or something like that? And that's exciting.
Look out for that, guys.
Yeah, so I mean, depending on when this comes out, definitely Google search Antonia Oakafor Vice and see if that's available. If you guys want to take a peek at that. But Antonia, is there anything else you needed to cover before we wrap up?
Man, we talked a lot. We talked about a
ton of
lot.
stuff.
It was good. It was good though. It's good. And I mean, it's a long time coming, so I'm glad that this happened and had a conversation.
Yeah.
Yes, you did. Yes, all the basics.
Antonia, where can people find you?
Oh man, people can find me on Instagram and Twitter. Most active. Antonia_Oakafor. It's OKAF as in Frank OR. And I'm mostly on that.
There you go.
So yeah, you can find me there.
We're super happy and super thankful that we had this conversation. And if you guys want to see the follow-up conversation, check us out on the private Discord channel, the Patreon, and we'll see if we can't all link up together and kind of keep the conversation going. If you guys have questions, I'm sure they could reach out, shoot you a message or something. I don't know if you check your DMs much. Yeah, I'm sure they're bussing, but
yes, you can. Yeah, I do check the DMs. That is probably the best way. If not, you can email me. I'm good with that. Antonia@gunowners.org is great too. If you have any questions there, please let me know.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you're doing with GOA and just bringing a certain level of balance to organizations that can sometimes be seen as lopsided. But also thankful for what GOA is doing and trying to make sure that gun owners and their rights are being protected and defended, especially as so many of us are kind of voting in such a way, not necessarily for this person or that person, but for certain values that don't align with what we think they do, such as the conversation with the school board that we had earlier. And let's go ahead and wrap up here. And until next time, keep it costly.